December. The month of joy, family gatherings, twinkling lights, and the warm embrace of loved ones. For most of us, Christmas represents the pinnacle of human connection, a time when we set aside our differences and celebrate together in peace and goodwill. But what happens when that peace is shattered? What happens when the season of giving becomes the season of taking? When the warmth of the holiday spirit is replaced by a cold, creeping dread that seeps into your bones and refuses to leave? Tonight, I'm sharing two true Christmas horror stories. These aren't urban legends passed down through generations. These aren't fictional tales designed to entertain. These are real experiences shared by real people who survived nightmares during what should have been the most wonderful time of the year. I've spent weeks researching these accounts, reading through Reddit threads, scouring creepypasta archives, and piecing together the fragments of these terrifying Christmas Eves. What I found will change the way you look at Advent calendars, family gatherings, and even the act of decorating your tree. So turn on every light in your house, lock your doors, check your windows, and whatever you do, don't listen to this alone. Because after tonight, you'll never look at Christmas the same way again. Let's begin with a story that starts in the most mundane of places, a roadside motel on Christmas Eve. December 24th, 2012. A family of four, let's call them the Morrison family, to protect their identity, found themselves stuck in a situation that millions of travelers experience every year, a cancelled flight. The Morrisons had been planning this trip for months, Christmas with relatives in Virginia. The parents, Michael and Sarah, their 16-year-old daughter Emma, and their 12-year-old daughter Lily. It was supposed to be perfect. Emma had been looking forward to seeing her cousins. Lily had been counting down the days on her Advent calendar for weeks. But Mother Nature had other plans. The first snowstorm of the season hit the East Coast like a freight train. Airports shut down, highways became parking lots, and the Morrisons, along with thousands of other travelers, found themselves stranded. By 9 p.m. on Christmas Eve, after hours of waiting in the airport, after every hotel within a 30-mile radius had been fully booked, they finally found a place that would take them. The Starlight Motel, a two-story relic from the 1972nd, the kind of place you only stay when you have absolutely no other choice. The building sat off the interstate, surrounded by empty fields and a few scattered pine trees dusted with fresh snow. The neon sign flickered erratically, vacancy, in letters that had seen better days. The parking lot was mostly empty, just a handful of cars covered in snow, their owners presumably asleep in their rooms. Emma remembers the smell. That's what hit her first when they entered their room. The overwhelming, almost nauseating smell of bleach. It wasn't the fresh, clean scent of a recently sanitized room. No, this was different. This was the smell of someone trying to cover something up. Layer upon layer of bleach, as if the room had been doused in it repeatedly. The room itself was exactly what you'd expect from a roadside motel. 2 double beds with floral bedspreads that were probably fashionable in 1982. A dresser with a tube TV sitting on top of it. A bathroom with questionable plumbing. Thin curtains that did little to block out the glow from the parking lot lights. Michael checked the locks on the door deadbolt and chain. Both seemed secure. Sarah pulled back the bedspread on one of the beds, checking for bedbugs out of habit. Everything seemed normal, if depressing. "It's just one night," Sarah said, trying to maintain a positive attitude. "Tomorrow, we'll drive to Virginia. The roads should be clear by then. We'll have Christmas dinner a day late. It'll be fine." Lily started crying quietly. She was 12, old enough to understand that their Christmas was ruined, but young enough to still feel the devastating weight of that disappointment. This was supposed to be magical. This was supposed to be perfect. Emma tried to comfort her sister, but she felt the same hollowness inside. 16 years old and spending Christmas Eve in a bleach-soaked motel room off the interstate. not exactly how she'd imagined it. By 10:30 p.m., exhaustion had overtaken disappointment. They divided up the sleeping arrangements, parents in one bed, Emma and Lily in the other. Michael and Sarah were asleep within minutes, the kind of deep, instant sleep that comes from hours of travel stress. Lily fell asleep soon after, curled up under the covers, still sniffling occasionally. Emma lay awake, staring at the water-stained ceiling tiles, listening to the sound of the heater rattling in the corner. The curtains glowed with that sickly orange light from the parking lot. Somewhere down the hall, she could hear a door slam. A car started in the parking lot, its engine rumbling before fading into the distance. She checked her phone. 11:47 p.m. Merry Christmas Eve, she thought bitterly. Eventually, around 1 a.m., exhaustion won. Emma drifted into an uneasy sleep, filled with fragmented dreams of airports and snowstorms and that overwhelming smell of bleach. Something woke Emma at 4:17 a.m. She would later tell investigators yes, this eventually became a police matter that she didn't know what woke her. It wasn't a sound, it wasn't a movement, it was something else. Something primal, the same instinct that causes animals to freeze when a predator is near. Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the darkness. The orange glow from the parking lot lights filtered through the curtains, casting everything in shades of amber and shadow. She could hear her father snoring softly, her mother's steady breathing, Lily's soft sighs beside her. And then she saw him. At first, Emma's brain tried to rationalize it, tried to make it into something innocent, a shadow cast by the dresser, a trick of the light, the coat rack in the corner. But as her eyes adjusted, as the reality of what she was seeing settled in with horrifying clarity, there was no denying it. A man was standing in their room. He was positioned between the two beds, closer to her parents' bed, just standing there, motionless, his face obscured by the darkness, but his silhouette unmistakable. Tall, Emma estimated around 6'3", based on how he compared to the height of the dresser. Built like a linebacker, broad shoulders, large frame, and he was staring directly at Emma's mother as she slept. For several seconds, or maybe it was minutes, Emma couldn't tell. Time seemed to stop completely. Emma's mind raced through 1,000 thoughts at once. How did he get in? The door was locked. The chain was on. She would have heard it, unless he was already in the room, hiding, waiting. The bathroom. He could have been hiding in the bathroom when they arrived, watching them through the crack in the door as they settled in for the night, listening to their conversations, waiting for them to fall asleep. Or worse, he had a key. He worked at the motel. He knew exactly which rooms were occupied and which weren't. He'd been doing this for years, maybe. Entering rooms in the dead of night, standing over sleeping families, watching. Emma's heart was pounding so hard she was certain it would wake everyone. She could feel each pulse in her temples, in her throat, in her fingertips. Her body wanted to do something, scream, jump up, fight, flee, but her mind overrode every impulse. If she moved, he would know she was awake. If he knew she was awake, what would he do? She forced herself to breathe slowly, quietly, through her nose. She kept her eyes partially closed, watching him through her eyelashes. She couldn't let him know she saw him. The man hadn't moved. He just stood there, perfectly still, like a statue. But Emma could sense something about him, a tension, a coiled energy. He was awake, alert, watching. What was he waiting for? Emma's mind went to dark places. She'd read enough true crime, watched enough documentaries. She knew what people were capable of. She knew about home invasions, about families murdered in their sleep, about things that were too horrible to contemplate but that happened anyway, in motel rooms just like this one, to families just like hers. Her father was a deep sleeper, always had been. You could set off fireworks next to his bed and he'd barely stir. There was no way to wake him quickly, no way to alert him to the danger without making noise that would tip off the intruder. Emma's training kicked in years of self-defense classes her parents had insisted on. She'd always thought they were being paranoid. Now she was grateful. But what good was self-defense training against a man twice her size? She was 16. She weighed maybe 130 pounds. This man could overpower her in seconds. She thought about Lily, sleeping beside her, blissfully unaware. Her baby sister. If this man moved toward them, Emma would have to do something. She'd have to fight. It wouldn't matter that she'd lose. She'd have to try. Tears started rolling down Emma's face. She couldn't help it. The fear, the adrenaline, the complete and utter helplessness of the situation. Hot tears that she was terrified would give her away. She didn't dare wipe them, didn't dare move. The man's head tilted slightly. Emma's breath caught. Had he seen her? Did he know? But no, he was looking at Sarah now, Emma's mother, studying her. The way his head cocked to one side reminded Emma of a predator, assessing prey, calculating, deciding. 5 minutes passed, maybe 10. Time had lost all meaning. Emma counted her mother's breaths, trying to focus on something, anything, to keep from completely losing it. And then, without warning, the man turned. Not toward Emma, not toward the door. He turned toward the corner of the room where the small bathroom was located. He moved with an eerie fluidity, his footsteps completely silent despite his size. One moment he was standing by the beds, the next he was at the bathroom door. Emma watched, frozen, as he stepped into the bathroom. She heard the soft creak of the bathroom door closing. This was her chance. This was it. She had maybe 30 seconds before he came back out. Emma's hand shot out and grabbed Lily's shoulder, shaking her awake, while simultaneously clamping her other hand over her sister's mouth to muffle any noise. Lily's eyes snapped open in confusion and fear. Emma put a finger to her lips, the universal sign for silence, and pointed toward the bathroom. Even in the darkness, she could see the color drain from Lily's face as understanding dawned. Emma's mind raced. The door, could they make it to the door? Unlock the deadbolt, remove the chain, get it open, get everyone out before he emerged from the bathroom? No, too risky. Too much time, too much noise. Wake their parents? But how, without making sound? And then Emma heard it. The sound that would haunt her for the rest of her life. The toilet flushing. He was coming back out. Emma made a split-second decision. She grabbed Lily and pulled her down, both of them ducking under the covers, hiding like children afraid of monsters. Except this monster was real. The bathroom door opened. Through the thin hotel sheets, Emma could see the shadow moving across the room. She held Lily tight, feeling her sister shaking, both of them barely breathing. The shadow paused. Emma's heart stopped. He was standing right next to their bed. She could smell him now, cigarettes and something else, something chemical, not cologne, something industrial. And then, impossibly, he spoke. "Sleep tight," he whispered. His voice was soft, almost gentle, which somehow made it infinitely more terrifying. Footsteps, moving away from the bed, moving toward the door. The sound of the chain being removed slowly, carefully, so as not to make noise. The deadbolt clicking open, the door handle turning. A rush of cold air from outside, the door closing with a soft click. And then, silence. Emma and Lily stayed under the covers for what felt like hours, but was probably only a few minutes. Finally, Emma threw off the sheets and jumped up, her legs weak and shaking. She stumbled to the door and checked it. Unlocked, the chain hanging loose, the deadbolt disengaged. He'd left. But how long had he been there? Had he entered while they were asleep? Or had he been hiding in the bathroom the entire time, waiting? Emma turned and looked at her parents, still sleeping soundly, completely unaware of what had just happened. Part of her wanted to wake them immediately. But another part, a part she wasn't proud of, wanted to let them sleep, to pretend it hadn't happened, to not have to relive it by explaining it. But Lily made the decision for her. She started screaming. Michael and Sarah jolted awake, confused and disoriented. Emma quickly relocked the door, putting the chain back on, and then the whole story came pouring out. Both sisters talking over each other, crying, trying to explain about the man who'd been standing in their room, watching them sleep. Sarah's face went white. Michael immediately called the front desk, then the police. The motel manager, a tired-looking man in his 60s named Bill, arrived within minutes. He swore up and down that it was impossible. The room hadn't been rented before them. Nobody else had keys. The computer showed no other check-ins. He seemed genuinely shocked and concerned. The police arrived around 5:30 a.m. Two officers took statements from Emma and Lily while their parents hovered nearby. The officers checked the bathroom empty. They examined the locks, no signs of forced entry. They reviewed the motel's security cameras. And that's when things got even more disturbing. The motel had 3 exterior cameras, one covering the parking lot, one covering the front office, and one covering the second-floor walkway. The Morrisons' room was on the ground floor, meaning anyone entering or leaving would have been captured by the parking lot camera. The police reviewed the footage from midnight to 5 a.m. Nothing. No one approached the room. No one left the room. The door never opened. Either the cameras had malfunctioned, which the officers noted seemed unlikely, given that they'd captured other activity like a car leaving around 2 a.m., or the man had entered the room before the Morrisons arrived and never left. Or there was a third option that nobody wanted to consider. He was still there, somehow. The officers searched the room thoroughly. They checked the bathroom ceiling tiles. They looked under the beds. They examined the closet. They found nothing. But they did find something in the bathroom that made everyone's blood run cold. On the mirror, written in soap, the letters barely visible, the kind of thing you'd only notice if you were looking for it, was a message. Been watching. Merry Christmas. The handwriting was crude, childlike almost. The officers photographed it immediately. The investigation went nowhere. Despite canvassing other guests, despite reviewing more footage, despite checking for fingerprints, there were dozens, from multiple people, none in the system. They never identified who the man was. The motel manager offered a theory there'd been a former employee who'd been fired 6 months earlier for stealing. He'd been caught taking cash from the register. The manager had reported it, and the man had done 30 days in county jail. His name was Derek Hollis, and he'd worked maintenance at the motel for 3 years before being fired. Derek would have had access to master keys. He would have known the layout of every room. He would have known how to enter without being detected. Police went to Derek's last known address, a trailer park about 15 miles away. He wasn't there. According to neighbors, he'd moved out 2 weeks prior. No forwarding address. His cell phone had been disconnected. He'd effectively vanished. To this day, Derek Hollis has never been found. The Morrisons spent the rest of that Christmas morning at the police station, giving statements, looking at photo lineups, trying to process what had happened. They eventually drove to Virginia around noon, arriving at their relative's house exhausted and traumatized. Emma is 29 now. She's married, has a 2-year-old daughter, but she still can't stay in hotels. The family rents vacation homes when they travel. And Emma always checks the bathroom, the closets, under the beds, because she knows the truth that many people refuse to accept. Sometimes, the monster under the bed is real. Sometimes, he's standing right next to you while you sleep. And sometimes, you wake up just in time to see him watching. The question that haunts Emma to this day isn't, why didn't he hurt us? It's, what was he waiting for? Our second story takes us back in time, back to 1965, before the internet, before cell phones, before the kind of 24-hour news cycle that would have made what happened impossible to cover up. This story was shared anonymously on a creepypasta forum in 2014 by someone who claimed to be in their late 50s at the time. They were 9 years old when it happened. I've done extensive research trying to verify the details, and while I can't confirm every aspect, what I can tell you is this. In late 1965, in a small town in upstate New York, 3 children did go missing over the span of 3 years, all on Christmas Eve. Their names were Tommy Graham, Cheryl Peterson, and Finn O'Connor. Tommy was 11 when he vanished on Christmas Eve, 1963. He'd been playing outside until dusk normal for that era and simply never came home. A massive search was conducted. Police, volunteers, search dogs, nothing. No body was ever found. Cheryl was 4 when she disappeared on Christmas Eve, 1964. She'd been walking home from a neighbor's house just 2 blocks and vanished somewhere along that short journey. Again, extensive searches. Again, nothing. And then came 1965, the year that our narrator, let's call him David, turned 9. The year his best friend Finn O'Connor would become the 3rd victim. But this story isn't really about the disappearances. Not directly. This story is about the Advent calendar. David's family wasn't wealthy, but they managed. His father worked at the local steel mill. His mother was a homemaker. They had enough for the necessities and maybe a few small luxuries at Christmas. David had been begging for an Advent calendar for months. Not just any calendar, the calendar, the one he'd seen in the shop window downtown. It was handmade, beautifully crafted. The front showed a Victorian Christmas street scene, with houses covered in snow, windows glowing with warm yellow light. Each of the 24 doors was intricately painted. The calendar itself was made of wood, not cheap cardboard. It was, by far, the nicest thing in Mr. Henderson's shop. David's mother visited Mr. Henderson's antique shop on December 1st and made a deal. $25, a significant sum in 1965, especially for a working-class family. But she wanted to give her son something special, something magical. Mr. Henderson wrapped it carefully in brown paper and string. He seemed reluctant to let it go. David would later remember. He'd looked at David's mother and said something strange. Make sure he opens it properly. 1 door per day. Not before midnight, not after dawn. This is important. David's mother had laughed it off as the eccentric old man being dramatic, but she'd agreed. That evening, December 1st, David unwrapped the calendar with trembling hands. It was even more beautiful up close. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. Each tiny door had a small brass knob. The numbers were painted in gold leaf. Behind the doors would be pictures, David assumed. Little Christmas scenes that would build toward December 25th. At precisely midnight, David had stayed up. Watching the clock, he opened the first door. What he saw behind that door would set off a chain of events that would end in tragedy. David screamed. The image behind the first door wasn't a pleasant Christmas scene. It was something else entirely. Something wrong. He saw a bridge, yes, a stone bridge covered in snow. But beneath the bridge, in the dark water below, something moved. Pale hands reached up from the depths. Faces, distorted and wrong, pressed against the underside of the ice. Children's faces. David's scream brought his parents running. His father, still groggy from sleep, looked at the calendar. What's wrong, kiddo? It's just a picture of a bridge. Look, there are children playing on top. David looked again. His father was right. The image had changed. Or had it? Now it showed children happily playing on top of the bridge, throwing snowballs. The dark water was just dark water. No hands, no faces. I thought I saw. David couldn't finish. His parents exchanged glances, the kind of looks parents give when they think their child is being dramatic. Bad dream, his mother said gently. Go back to bed. But David knew what he'd seen. It wasn't a dream. That night, he dreamed of Finn, his best friend, alive and well, laughing as they built a snowman. But then, the dream shifted. Finn was running, terror on his face. He was in a dark place, a tunnel or a sewer, water rushing past, and he was screaming a single word, run. David woke up sweating, his heart pounding. It was just a dream, just a dream. December 2nd, David waited until midnight again, his parents asleep. He was scared to open the second door, but curiosity won out. This time, the image was of a Victorian house, beautiful Christmas decorations, a wreath on the door, lights in the windows. Through one of the windows, David could see a Christmas tree. And standing next to the tree, almost hidden in the shadows, was a figure, tall, thin, wearing what looked like a long coat. The figure's face was obscured, but David could feel it watching him, watching through the calendar. He slammed the door shut and ran to his room. The next morning, he told his mother he didn't want the calendar anymore. Could they give it away? Put it in the attic? His mother was hurt. She'd spent so much money on it. David, honey, it's just a calendar. There's nothing wrong with it. You're letting your imagination run away with you. Reluctantly, David agreed to keep it, but he wouldn't open any more doors. Except, the doors opened themselves. On December 3rd, David woke to find the third door hanging open. Behind it was an image of a playground. Empty swings swaying in the wind, but in the sandbox, something was buried. Just a small hand visible, poking out of the sand. Days passed. Each morning, David would find another door had opened during the night. Each image was worse than the last. December 5th showed his street, his actual street. He recognized the houses, the lampposts, and in the picture, standing under one of the streetlights, was the tall figure from the house. Closer now, more detailed, wearing what looked like Victorian clothing. Its face was still shadowed, but David could see a smile, too wide, too many teeth. The dreams continued. Every night, Finn appeared, always running, always screaming, "Run, get away, it's coming." December 10th. The image showed the inside of a church, beautiful stained glass windows, but the pews were filled with shadowy figures, dozens of them, all facing forward, all perfectly still. David started researching at the library. He needed to understand what was happening. In the section on local history, he found something that made his blood run cold. An article from 1897, a headline, "Local children go missing during Christmas festival." According to the article, 12 children had vanished over the course of 2 weeks in December 1897. They were all between the ages of 4 and 12. They disappeared one by one, usually in the evening, usually near the town center. No bodies were ever found. The investigation eventually concluded that they'd been taken by a traveling circus that had been in town, though this was never proven. The case remained unsolved. But what caught David's attention was a detail buried in the article. The police had questioned a local craftsman named Emmanuel Winters, who'd been seen talking to some of the children before they vanished. Winters was a toy maker and artisan. The article mentioned that his shop had been searched, but nothing incriminating had been found. Emmanuel Winters. The name sounded familiar. Where had David heard it before? And then he remembered. Mr. Henderson's shop. There was a plaque on the wall describing the building's history. It had been built in 1875 and had originally been a toy maker's workshop, owned by Emmanuel Winters. David raced home and checked the advent calendar. On the back, burned into the wood, was a maker's mark, EW 1897. Emmanuel Winters had made this calendar in 1897, the same year the children had vanished. David tried to destroy the calendar. He really did. On December 12th, he took it outside and tried to burn it. The wood wouldn't catch fire. He tried smashing it with a hammer. The wood wouldn't break. He tried throwing it in the garbage. It was back in his room the next morning. The doors continued opening. The images grew more disturbing. December 15th showed a room filled with old-fashioned toys, dolls, tin soldiers, wooden trains. But the dolls' eyes were all watching, following, hungry. David stopped sleeping. Dark circles formed under his eyes. He was 9 years old and looked haunted. His parents took him to Dr. Marshall, the family physician. Dr. Marshall prescribed rest and warm milk before bed. He suggested David was experiencing stress from the recent disappearances. Tommy and Cheryl were local children. After all, It was natural for kids David's age to be frightened, but it wasn't fear of an abstract concept. David knew, with a certainty he couldn't explain, that whatever had taken Tommy and Cheryl was connected to the calendar, and it was coming for someone else. For Finn. On December 20th, David found Finn after school and told him everything: the calendar, the images, the dreams, the research about Emmanuel Winters. Finn didn't laugh at him, didn't call him crazy. Instead, Finn's face went pale. "I've been having dreams too," Finn admitted. "About being chased. About water. About drowning. I thought they were just nightmares." The two boys made a plan. They would stay together. Safety in numbers. Finn would sleep over at David's house every night until Christmas passed. Their parents agreed, given the recent disappearances, nobody was letting their kids wander around alone anyway. December 21st. The image showed a clock tower. David recognized it immediately, the old town hall. The clock showed 11:55 p.m., 5 minutes to midnight. And at the base of the tower, barely visible, was a small figure, a boy. December 22nd. The same clock tower. The clock now showed 11:58 p.m. The boy was closer to the tower's entrance. December 23rd, 11:59 p.m. The boy was at the door. David and Finn knew what December 24th would show. Neither of them wanted to see it, but they couldn't look away. On the evening of December 23rd, David's father came home early from the steel mill. There'd been an accident, nothing serious, but they were shutting down the production line for the night. He found David and Finn huddled in David's room, staring at the advent calendar. "What's wrong with you boys?" he asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." David tried to explain one more time, tried to show his father what was happening, but when his father looked at the calendar, he saw only pleasant Christmas scenes. Nothing sinister, nothing wrong. "David," his father said, his voice firm but kind, "this needs to stop. You're scaring Finn. You're scaring your mother. I don't know if this is some kind of elaborate prank or if you genuinely believe what you're saying, but enough is enough." He reached for the calendar. "Don't," David started, but his father had already grabbed it, intending to take it away, to put it somewhere out of sight. The moment his father's hands touched the calendar, his expression changed. The color drained from his face. His hands started shaking. "My God," he whispered. I can see them." Whatever David's father saw in that moment, he never fully explained. But he immediately released the calendar, stumbling backward. His eyes were wide, his breathing rapid. "We're leaving," he said. "Pack a bag. We're going to your grandmother's. Right now, tonight." David's mother protested they had plans. They had a turkey defrosting. It was Christmas Eve tomorrow. But one look at her husband's face silenced her objections. Within an hour, they were packed. David's father carried one suitcase to the car. David's mother carried another. David carried his little sister. And the advent calendar sat on the kitchen table, forgotten in the rush to leave. As they pulled out of the driveway, David looked back at the house. Through the kitchen window, he could see the calendar. And he could see the 24th door slowly swinging open, even though no one was near it. They made it to David's grandmother's house, 3 hours away, by 10 p.m. on December 23rd. That night, David didn't dream. For the first time in weeks, he slept deeply and dreamlessly. On Christmas Eve morning, his mother received a phone call from their neighbor back home, Mrs. Chen. There'd been a terrible tragedy. Finn O'Connor had left his house late on December 23rd around 10 p.m., right after David's family had departed. He'd told his parents he was walking over to David's house, forgetting they'd already left. Finn never arrived. Search parties found his body on Christmas morning in the old storm drain system beneath the town hall. Drowned. The medical examiner estimated he'd been dead for approximately 8 hours, meaning he'd died right around midnight on December 24th. The investigation revealed that Finn had somehow ended up in the storm drains. Perhaps he'd fallen through a grate. Perhaps he'd been chasing something. The narrow tunnels had flooded from snowmelt, and Finn had become trapped. He drowned in cold, dark water, alone, on Christmas Eve. His body was discovered just 50 feet from an exit ladder. If he'd made it just a little further, he would have survived. David's father never returned to their house. He hired movers to pack everything and put the house on the market. The family moved permanently to another state. The Advent calendar was among the items packed. But when the moving boxes arrived at their new home and were unpacked, the calendar wasn't there. It had vanished somewhere in transit. For years, David wondered where it had ended up. In a thrift store? At a yard sale? Given as a gift to another unsuspecting family? He wondered if, somewhere out there, another 9-year-old child was opening the first door and seeing something impossible, something terrifying, something that would lead to tragedy. In 2011, David received a package in the mail, no return address. Inside was a newspaper clipping from a small town in Oregon. The headline read, "Child goes missing on Christmas Eve, third disappearance in 3 years." And underneath the article, someone had written in red ink, "The calendar remembers." David never found out who sent the package, but he knows the calendar is still out there, still being opened, still showing its terrible images to whoever possesses it. And every Christmas Eve, David locks every door and window in his house. He stays awake until dawn, and he thinks about Finn, drowning in the dark, screaming for help that never came. Because some Advent calendars don't count down to Christmas, they count down to death. Christmas is supposed to be a season of warmth, light, and comfort. A time when the world feels softer, safer, and closer than it usually is. But every year, stories like these remind us that the cold doesn't stay outside, and the darkness doesn't always respect the holiday spirit. There are motel rooms where someone still enters without leaving footprints. There are objects that return no matter how many times you try to destroy them. There are songs that were never meant to play again, yet somehow continue to echo through the night. And maybe the most unsettling truth is this: not everything that happens in December can be explained. Some things simply watch, some things follow, and some choose. So when you turn on your Christmas lights, when you check your windows, when you lock your door before going to sleep, remember that not every winter story is meant to bring comfort. Some are born from people who saw something they shouldn't have, and from what happened afterward. Until next time, keep a light on. You might need it.